Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Brath Wang. Tensions between Manila and Beijing continue to rise in the South China Sea. Jay Terriella, Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson, shared on X that its largest ship, the BRP Teresa Magbanua, was, quote, compelled to return to port from Sabina Shoal due to bad weather, depleted supplies, and evacuating personnel out of dire medical conditions. We'll look at what this means for the region and whether China's intimidation campaign is actually working. Joining us to discuss this today are Arthur Ding, National Zhengzhi University Professor Emeritus, Tieling Yin, Project Manager of the Center for Peace and Security at the Taipei School of Economics and Political Science Foundation. A very warm welcome to both on the show today. Let's first talk about the sudden evacuation. The Philippine Coast Guard ship retreated on the 15th with a number of sick crew members taken off stretchers. This is allegedly a result of Chinese efforts to cut supplies with a complete blockade starting at the end of August. Without access to food, many of the 60 crew members were left starving, relying only on rainwater during those gruesome 3 weeks. Professor Ding, does China see this as a win?
Basically, China sees this kind of a victory for China's effort to block the Philippines to resupply, because Philippines will now resupply and will temporarily withdraw from the Sabina Shoal. So this is the first point, that this is perceived by China kind of a victory. Another victory should be watched in the sense that, because we see during this process, United States once again made a statement, say they will support Philippines' effort in defending the so-called maritime territory. But we only see, the statement without the so-called real action taken by United States. Why United States did not take real action? Because United States signed so-called mutual defense treaty with Philippines. But for this case, China launched the so-called Coast Guard ship. It's kind of paramilitary. It's not a real military. So although United States made a statement, says that they will support the Philippines' effort to defend their maritime territory, but the both sides, the China and the Philippines, they mobilize their Coast Guard ships, not warships. So there's no real so-called good excuse for United States to provide military support to the Philippines. But because without there's no reason for United States to provide military support, so leave Philippines alone to handle the whole case, then they will give China to do the international propaganda, say that, look, although United States say they will continue to provide support to the Philippines' effort defending their maritime territory, but in fact, United States is doing nothing. So this really allowed China to make international propaganda, and this is somewhat detrimental to U.S. effort in this region to build its so-called alliance relationship.
Captain Yin, I wanted to turn to what the professor just mentioned in terms of the United States and the Philippines being in this mutual treaty. But what we've seen the State Department say, and also certain U.S. officials come out and talk about, that they are actually in support for whatever the Philippines needs in terms of, but that's on the condition that the Philippines requests for support from the United States, including escorts of its ships to these resupply missions. Why do you think the Philippines is holding back on that?
They consider the effect will not be in their interest. That's why they withdraw that ship, even though there's a U.S. promise that they will provide support. The difference is, every mutual defense treaty, they have Article 5, and they also have an internal procedure to get past the Congress and declare war. So that's a very serious thing. So in this situation, I think they mean to stand long enough there, and that they have already won international sympathies. I think that was the Philippines' objective.
Given that there actually was a retreat, do you feel turn to Professor Ding, this could be applied to the Taiwan Strait as well in terms of China's intimidation tactics.
This likelihood is there because we can see in the past several months, China really increases the frequency of maritime patrol by the Coast Guard ships. Particularly beginning of February this year, when we have an accident in Quemoy area, then we see in the past several months, China increased the deployment of the so-called Coast Guard ships to the Taiwan Straits and gradually move their so-called warship to east of Taiwan. So it's a kind of a new pattern there now that seems China want to employ so-called this kind of a paramilitary instead of pure military approach in the Taiwan Straits. I think this is a kind of a tactical or some kind of a temporary change maybe because China probably, before China launch all-out invasion against us, then China maybe need to test different strategy, and also combination between so-called Coast Guard ships and the warship, so on and so forth, because depend on the overall strategy. So this what I mean, let's back to say that in the past several months, particularly after February this year, China increased the deployment of Coast Guard ships in the Taiwan Straits, and we see all the warships to the east of Taiwan these days. So this is kind of a new pattern, and China seems now deploy more and more Coast Guard ships in the Taiwan Strait. Maybe the goal is try to, with this kind of a numerical advantage, they try to dispel or repel the U.S. Coast Guard ships in this region in the future.
So, Captain, what should the Philippines and Taiwan do, given China's changing its tactics, as we've seen with the Sabina Shoal and also around Kinmen?
I think Kinmen is similar, but still a lot of difference in nature, not to mention Taiwan. I believe, even though I mentioned the operational concept is very similar, almost the same, but I would rather say it's not a blockade, it's the quarantine, because it does not resort of a military force or naval force or air force. It's simply law enforcement activity.
Is there anything we can do here, do you feel, in Taiwan or the Philippines to respond to this?
Sure. There's a lot of things we can do because the dispute is basically sovereignty. So if their Coast Guard cutter come to harass your fishermen or your Coast Guard, you can do the same, right? Just like if you don't do that, simply they are prevailing, you are losing sight. So you want to prevent that from saying you are weaker. So you can do the same to the other side.
So would that come in the form of strengthening the Coast Guard in Taiwan and the Philippines?
Definitely, that's what we're doing, right? So it's the only way. I mean, that unless you can talk to them. Nowadays, we don't want to talk to them because you will never win on the negotiating table because, Beijing has, in a stronger type. So it's not that easy. Just so the negotiating table and actually on the field, you have to show your strengths. So in this case, United States really have to come and support it, no matter orally or in action.
Let's now hear from Professor Renato Cruz de Castro, Distinguished Professor at the Department of International Studies at De La Salle University. He's an expert in regional security and is currently attending the U.S.-Taiwan Defense Industry Conference. Let's take a look. Professor, you're in the United States. Tell us about what it feels there with the U.S. and its allies, given the tensions between China and the Philippines.
The most pressing one is what's happening in the Middle East. But nevertheless, China is still being discussed in terms, of course, of what China is doing in the South China Sea, in terms of the fact that China is basically using coercion and harassment against a U.S. treaty ally. But of course, there's also talk about Taiwan. The fact that people are also talking about supposed to be what was mentioned by former Indo-PACOM Admiral John Aquilino, just before he stepped down as the U.S. Indo-PACOM commander last year, that, given Chinese military buildup, the largest military buildup, China might be planning something big in the near future. And of course, Admiral Aquilino has been very clear. He basically gave the year 2027. Interestingly, I had a chance to have a discussion with his successor, Indo-PACOM Admiral Samuel Paparo, who I met in Manila. And he has also basically the same assessment. The United States had never witnessed such a massive military buildup in a peacetime situation. And that's, of course, what China has been doing in the past few years. Massive buildup in terms of increase in defense budget, buildup, of course, of the People's Liberation Army's Navy as the largest Navy in the world, also buildup of the Chinese Coast Guard, and of course, what we're witnessing right now is Chinese coercive and aggressive action against both the Philippines and Taiwan.
How do you see the U.S. as the strongest partner out there of both countries work together? And we also have Japan.
I see already preparation of a possibility that this confrontation will be a head-on confrontation. The fact that the Philippines had already offered 4 enhanced defense cooperation sites in Luzon, which is, of course, not very far from Taiwan. You have, of course, the conduct of, what is called the balikatan, shoulder-to-shoulder military exercises that have been geared primarily on conventional warfare. And, of course, you have the deployment of, large number of American troops. You also have, of course, Japan and the Philippines starting to cooperate with one another. And, of course, the formation of this trilateral security partnership last April.
Professor, you mentioned Luzon. It's become a big buzzword now with the defense missile system. Has this changed the dynamic in terms of security and deterring China?
Yes, it's significant because this is the first time that the U.S. Army has developed and, of course, deployed its first intermediate range ballistic missile. The U.S. Army has deployed that missile system in Luzon. That missile system, of course, is mobile. It's very difficult to destroy it. It could fire 2 types of, trajectories, cruise missile and another long-range missile. Just in case you have a hypothetical invasion of Taiwan, it could basically attack Chinese warships, and it could also target Chinese cities and port areas where you have, of course, Chinese forces might be mobilized before, of course, they start the invasion of Taiwan. So the Chinese are not very happy.
So in your assessment and your conversations, Professor, you feel that this system will remain in the Philippines?
It will remain in the Philippines, and the decision whether that missile system will be withdrawn will be based on the decision of the United States and the Philippines. The Philippines would not be pushed or pressured by China in withdrawing that weapon system. When Wang Yi raised this issue to our Foreign Secretary, Secretary Enrique Manalo, Secretary Enrique Manalo basically said those missiles would be used for defensive purposes. Then, of course, recently the spokesperson of the Armed Forces of the Philippines said, no, those missiles would stay here. And more significantly, our National Security Advisor, Secretary Anyo, said and told the Chinese, no country will tell us what to do. I was in a press conference when the Armed Forces of the Philippines Chief of Staff, Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, General Romeo Browner, said the missiles will be there because the Armed Forces of the Philippines are training on how to use this missile system. The Philippines is interested in acquiring that missile system. I just talked with the Philippine ambassador here in the United States.
Speaking of the U.S., the Typhon has been making global headlines lately. The Typhon is a mid-range missile launcher that the country has deployed to an undisclosed location in the northern part of Luzon, the Philippines' largest island. The U.S. has ignored calls by China to remove it and says that it has no plans to remove the Typhon after it was used for military games in April. The Typhon missile system has a maximum range of over 1,600 kilometers, allowing the U.S. to hit targets in and around China. Apart from Taiwan and the Luzon Strait, it can reach key Chinese cities from Shanghai to Guangzhou and major PLA military bases. Professor Ting, is this a game changer in the region?
It's hard to say the Typhon is a game changer or not, but for me, it's kind of counterbalance against whatever China's advantage. We know that since 1996 Taiwan Strait crisis, China started to develop the so-called trump card or game change, the missile able to hit the mobile target in the seas, particularly the so-called aircraft carriers. So we see in the past almost 3 decades, China already developed different kind of conventional ballistic missile or cruise missiles, and particularly so-called the DF Dongfeng, so-called 27 or 17, able to hit the so-called Guam, and also able to hit, again, as I said earlier, so-called mobile warships, particularly so-called U.S. aircraft carriers. So, but this is the advantage Chinese military has. But look at what the United States has. Since the so-called late 1980s, when United States and the former Soviet Union signed the so-called cut off the so-called mid-range ballistic missile, the U.S. has no so-called mid-range ballistic missile at all. So now, in order to make up the deficiency that the U.S. force in East Asia or in the world, so U.S. now start to develop and deploy so-called mid-range ballistic missile. So Typhon is the one, but what I say is this is a kind of a counterbalance against the China's advantage.
Captain, what does this mean in the context of Taiwan? Do you feel it makes Taiwan safer?
Yeah, certainly. Back to the original question first, that is a game changer or not. It's not a game changer if there's only one battery there. If there's 100 battery there, it's probably a game changer. Look at Taiwan, we are buying 100 battery of the coastal defense cruise missile, Harpoon missiles, land-based, with 400 missiles. And we develop our own Zhongzhang and Zhongfeng 2 cruise missiles. The number probably 1,000. So the number tells you how deterrence effect you have, how defense capability you have. So the difference, if you are talking about is a game changer or not, is surely how many missiles, how many bullets you have. If you have only one, it's basically no use at all. If it has 100, you have thousands. That's totally different. So in short, the first island chain, no matter it's Japan, so Japan is procuring 500 Tomahawk missiles, and they will develop 1,000 of their cruise missiles, anti-ship cruise missiles as well. So numbers, you see the numbers, 500 Tomahawks, 1,000 ship attack cruise missiles. We have about 2,000 as well, eventually. So Philippines need to have more. So we have to develop our own A2AD. So in the 20 years ago, they come up the idea, anti-access area denial strategy or tactics. So they develop lots of the land attack, land-based attack ballistic missile, cruise missiles that's try to prevent, try to intercept the foreign intervention. There's a conflict within first island chain. So obviously that's for Taiwan contingency. So if a first island chain country can develop our own A2AD strategy, tactics, or force development, deployment, employment, all those things, that's a counterbalance, just like Professor Ding talked about earlier. So that will be game changer. That will be definitely a game changer.
Taiwan's own, and also.
But that's strike a military balance within Taiwan Strait or within first island chain.
In terms of the U.S. and China relations, China has been seen by many analysts to wanting to avoid tensions with the U.S., given that the election is coming up in November. But given these repeated calls by its high-level government officials, do you feel China feels that this issue is more important than making China itself an issue in the U.S.?
I think that's a two-pronged strategy. Negotiation is one thing. What happened in the field is another thing. It happens a lot in history. So both sides need to, Washington need to understand that China's policy, either on Taiwan or on South China Sea or on East China Sea, has never changed. They can maintain status quo for a certain period of time. When they see the time is right, they will take actions. Simply because they consider they have a sovereignty on those dispute rocks, islands, reefs, no matter what you consider Taiwan as well. So the strategy or the policy has never changed, but tactics can be changed over the time. So gradually you see different action Chinese take. You have to deal with that. If you are not prepared, you are extremely passive, becoming in a passive type. So that means you don't take the lead.
So Captain, what is the goal of the PLA? What is the goal of China?
Eventually, they will recover all the things they consider that's theirs. Simple as that.
And the only way you could deal with this is through strength.
Either you talk to it, or you talk with them, or you simply grab it.
Professor Ting, do you feel diplomacy still has room here, given China's stance and its ultimate motive to, as Captain Yin mentioned, to recover what it considers is its own?
Well, when the tension build up, and there's so many so-called the stakers, so I would say, on the one hand, inevitably, the so-called military build up in order to balance each other, But on the other hand, diplomacy sometimes still matter a lot, because through this kind of diplomatic effort, we can manage the tension to try to at least not to escalate the tension or proliferate the so-called the tension.
Captain Yin, how do you see this in terms of China being more aggressive and pushing the U.S. and its allies?
They have, from now on, it's a 30 years plan. They wanted to create a great Chinese nation rejuvenation by the middle of this century. That's very scary. Look around the world. Any country plan 40 years ahead, 30 years ahead, and they simply show the world we're going to become first level socialist power in the middle of this century. And by 2035, we become the #1 military power, things like that. It's so obvious, shows everybody without any, try any things to hide my intention. So that, for the surrounding country or for Europe or for United States, for Washington, D.C., that's very scary things. For Washington, D.C. as well. In Washington, you see the Biden administration considered, no matter how serious the competition would be between China and United States, but we have rail guards there. So you do not cross the rail guard, you do not cross the red line. So both sides do not want to have direct confrontation or conflict with each other. So Washington now is doing whatever they can to ensure that they can deter the Beijing decided to use of force to resolve South China Sea issues or Taiwan Strait issues or East China Sea.
And is deterrence working, in your opinion?
I think they're pretty much making progress, and they keep saying things like that. But at the same time, U.S. has a dilemma as well. They need to take care of all those friends and allied countries, in the first island chain to try to not to be bullied by China. So both Beijing and Washington are doing whatever they can to ensure they don't have a conflict with each other because of either South China Sea or Taiwan Strait, or with Japan in the South China Sea, East China Sea, all those kind of things. So what I'm getting at is, in the first island chain, because all those democracies, first island chain, we have 3 democracies there, and we all have our population voters to answer it. We do not want to show the weakness when they deal with or facing such a huge bully. So sometimes, inevitably, you would take a stronger position or take a stronger action, but really have to negotiate with Washington beforehand to ensure that whatever we're doing is in our interests as well as in Washington's interests. If you do things, it's not in U.S., not in Washington interests, the catastrophic result, you have to face that. So I simply urge, in things like that, all action we taken, no matter it's stronger or weaker, you need to consider it deeply and give a heads up to your big brother behind it.
Thank you very much for both of your insights. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching our show. Stay safe and see you next time.